Hey, I'm Nick.
And I'm Graham.
And this is the Dude, Where's My Code podcast, and we're on episode number 13. And today we got to chat a little bit about communication patterns. So we were talking about instant messaging on Teams and emails, and sort of how the different cultural aspects of your team evolve and how they affect those things.
Yeah, and just talking about, using the values of your team to dictate or inform how your team will kind of discuss, collaborate, communicate, and then also just figure out how to tweak and tune that signal to noise ratio. So, the information going out and coming in isn't overwhelming and is enough kind of for everyone on the team, but in a way that is actionable and useful, not just noise.
Awesome. So we thought it was a good chat. If you could do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, we'd appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. This has been something that I feel like we spent a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff years back with like different chat rooms and stuff, and how like when you have team chats and like chats for certain topics and stuff like that, you start to have like even how you separate your communication channels can get like really interesting, where like having something that comes to mind is like DevOll chat. It was like, this is the chat like that all the engineers go talk in. And I mean, DevOll, when we would have been working together, was not just like software engineers, but everyone in development. Mm-hmm. But then it was like you had to almost like moderate it as like a part-time job, where it was like, oh, you're posting memes here. Like, no, that's for the other room. Like, you got to get out of
channel.
Here. Yeah, you go to the memes channel. And then there was this like notion of like, if you go click over into like this other memes channel and you like see everyone just like blasting away conversing, you're like, wait, is anyone working here? Like, and then people are like, aren't we allowed to talk in here? And it's this really weird dynamic, right? Where it's like, you told me to leave the other channel where I was talking and participating to come here, and now it looks bad on me because I'm talking in here. Like, which one is it? Mm-hmm. It's just an interesting dynamic.
I think about, I think about like Slack channels a lot. And I believe channels are easy to make. So I'm a pretty big fan of making channels that are oriented around a specific topic, whether it's like a project we're going to work on or whatever. But then I get into these weird situations where I'm like, okay, like what deserves a channel and what doesn't. So I have, two technical leads that I kind of lean on for a lot of our like technical direction and stuff. So we have like a leads meeting every week. And I'm like, okay, do I have a channel with just them?
Right.
I guess there's a leads channel, but then like, I really hate private channels a lot. But then like, if you have a public channel that's like leads discussions, but then other people can join, isn't it really just the engineering channel? I'm like, how do you like, it's always really interesting to think about. And then again, like I want this has happened a few times at different teams. I want our team chat to feel like a place where anybody can talk about team stuff. So sure. I want it to be anything from like, hey, I'm here, or I'm stepping out for a coffee, I'll be back, through to like, hey, I'm tackling this problem, who can help me with it? And kind of any of that, like, what would we talk about as a team in person? Let's put that all here. Mm-hmm. And then like someone will inevitably be like, okay, I'm making a Slack bot to post uptime. Should that go in the team channel? And then it's like, sure. And then it's like, okay, fine. That seems fine. And then suddenly like you have a few bots posting in the team channel, and suddenly there's more bots posting than people. And then people are like, things get lost because there's all and then you're like, I guess we need a bots channel. And then we have a bots channel. And then like people don't necessarily pay attention to it because it's not like the primary channel they live in.
Build's been broken for 2 years now, but we don't check the bots channel.
No one knows because we're memeing in the meme channel.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, no, that's an interesting challenge, right? And I feel like from my experience with Slack, at least, I've been comfortable like searching for information in Slack. So when you talk about having multiple channels for like different projects and topics, what goes through my head is like, how discoverable is that information? Because I'm just going to make up an example. If you're like, hey, let's have a I'm maybe exaggerating your train of thought. I don't know, but hey, like we need to interact with a SQL database. So let's go talk about like the SQL stuff in the SQL channel. And you start doing that. And then it's like, okay, but now you have a product or a project you're working on that uses SQL. So you're talking about some of that stuff back in the other channel. And then you're like, well, wait, didn't we talk about this certain type of query or whatever? And you're like, where is it? But I think in Slack, it's pretty easy. You just literally go to the search bar, type something about SQL in this case, and it's going to show you the different channels that have content for it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. My model in Slack when I'm trying to find something is if I'm like, where would that be talked about? And maybe it's like something I don't know about yet, or maybe it's like something I know happened, but I go and do like channel search, right?
Sure.
And then I'll search like, in your example, I would search like SQL. And then it's like, okay, what I'll probably see is like SQL Tech channel. And we'll have like some sort of naming convention. So, you know, like if a channel is about specific technologies that you want to like chat about, like tech channel, if it's a project channel, like project is like a suffix, whatever. So what I'll do is if you go and type SQL, you might see like SQL Tech, and then you might see like SQL migration project, right? And then it's like, oh, right. So I know that channel is for the project that did this thing, and that channel is for like random discussion about the tech. And so then generally you find where you want to go. And then, like you said, if you're like, I just know a keyword, but I don't remember if we were talking about it in the context of a project or not, so I don't know how to find the channel, then just do a keyword search and hopefully it pops up. The thing that I dislike about Slack is that in my experience, people have been quick to make private channels.
Sure.
And
yeah,
like private information is okay it has a time and a place, but I really believe in working transparently and openly as much as possible. And so I think the question should be like, why does this need to be private? When I worked at Autodesk, they had like some policies about like, you have to get an exception to create a private channel. Like everything will be public unless like you can get an exception. But then people started finding loopholes like, well, you know, if we're talking about, I don't really remember them exactly. I think it's like if our team is talking about people being away for sick days, like that's got an HR element to it. So we want a private team channel. And it was like, it kind of gets gamified that way. But frankly, private channels suck because you don't even see a list of the names of the private channels you're not in. So like when I join a new company, I'm like, I'm trying to find where this team is hanging out and talking. I can go search all day for channels called like dev team, Android team, whatever I'm looking for. And if they're private, I just don't even know they're there until someone who is in that channel invites me. And I have literally had someone tell me, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable adding you to this channel for like,
they don't know if they're like not polluting it. That's too strong of a word, but like
breaching some sort of trust of the people in the channel, even though it's like a channel about a thing I specifically was tasked with managing.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, now things are getting super weird. So yeah, so that's probably the only part of where I would say discoverability is like, if it's in a private channel, it is significantly less discoverable.
So I'm trying to think about your discoverability scenario there with respect to some of the stuff. Like I've switched to Microsoft, so we use Teams, but I come from using Slack like all of the time. So there's a couple of concepts in Teams that I'm like not, I'm gonna say like not comfortable with, not because I like oppose them, but like I don't know how to use them properly. And it's gonna sound really weird to say out loud, but like Teams, so not like a chat room, but like when you set up a team, that setup does not work for me conceptually. So I'm like in like 50 different teams, but they span so many different topics. And anytime I see a message come up in one of them, I'm like, oh, I should mute this because I don't think I've ever cared about the content in here because I've never had to respond to it. So from a discoverability perspective, that whole portion of the application to me is just like it doesn't exist. Now I'm left with chat rooms, and the only chats that I can see are the ones I've been added to, because by default, if you and I started a chat, it's private. And then we go, oh, we want to add person ABC. They're added, but it's private to the people you add. So there's zero discoverability. If I wanted to go talk to a team that's a partner team, I go to email because I can't see their chat room. They might have a Teams team, but like I wouldn't even know how to go navigate that to find it. Like, so there's, from my perspective, there's zero discoverability, which is challenging.
Mm-hmm. Someone I worked with at PlanGrid went on to found another company doing like an HR information system called Ashby. And actually a bunch of people who worked at PlanGrid now work at Ashby. And they recently published a blog post on the way they handle communication. And I thought it was really interesting. But there was one thing in there that caught me off guard, which was for anything that needs to be discussed with a group of people, they prefer, I'm gonna screw up the exact like definition of when, but it seems like whenever there's something that needs to like discuss parameters of a project with a group of people, their chosen default is email. Because the way email handles like threading and like whatever, as opposed to a Slack room. I think they actually advocated for like minimal use of Slack. It's very interesting. It was like very different from my past experience where most of my roles, the majority of my inbox is full of alerts and crap that I probably don't read, as opposed to threads about meaningful things.
That's a really interesting point, because exactly what you just explained was my transition into Microsoft. Everything that I would have done before would have been like, I think someone at Magnet pulled up stats of like messages sent and stuff in Slack, and I had like an obscene number of messages. Like it was just comically a large amount. And when I think about it, it's like that's how I'm used to talking. When I work on projects with people from a programming perspective, like if I'm coding, sometimes I will talk to a room where no one will respond for like a week. And I'm just like, here I am, like I'm doing this because I'm like stream of consciousness, just like blasting into a room because it helps me. And if people see it and they're like, oh, Nick's debugging something, I can jump in and help, or, oh, that's a useful piece of information, I'll pick it up later. I'm like, at least there's information somewhere. Mm-hmm. And that way of working, like that works well for me. I'm sure some people are like, Nick, you message too much, so that's fine. But the complete opposite has happened now, where I work literally on the Exchange side of Microsoft. It is email.
Yeah.
That's like all it is. So I get like thousands of emails a day. All of the communication people prefer over email. But a lot of it, I think, is because people are so familiar with searching through email to get the information they want, mm-hmm. that switching from that to something else is like an uncomfortable move. Even if the other tool or tools, whatever, did a good job of it, they're like, this, I know how to do it this way. So why would I change?
I just think back to my BlackBerry days where I'm pretty sure I got like 500 plus emails a day. And so it was just the end of the day was click, select all, mark as read, because
there's no way
I'm never going to read them and I don't think it matters. So that was like moving into smaller companies where conversations shifted out of email was just like fantastic for me, because I don't have this stream of emails constantly coming in. There's a stream of like chat messages, but it's a lot easier for me to like group them and categorize them. And I know some people are really, really great with email, like filters and folders and whatever, but right. I'm not. So
I've never been that way for whatever reason. Chat channels and things like that, just I feel more suited for. But it's been interesting on our team, because I feel like people that have been at Microsoft longer, kind of regardless of their age, it's not really a factor, but like people that have been there longer are more used to email communication, and people that have come in more recently, I feel like they're in the same kind of boat as me, where they're like, kind of like talking in the chat room because I feel like it's more responsive and just these other dynamics. So it becomes an interesting challenge within the team of like, someone has solved a problem or someone needs help debugging, whatever it happens to be. It's like, it would be great to share that learning with the team. So where do you put it? Like, do you put it to the chat? Well, what if someone has to go look for it later? well, I prefer email because I know how to search my email. Okay, so have your conversation and then summarize it in an email and send it.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's different ways we could do this, but it's really about establishing, like, how does the team want to operate, and what are the goals that we're trying to accomplish with that communication.
But there probably isn't clearly documented criteria or rules for which one you use when.
No, and like, it's funny because I feel like that would not be good, but at the same time, like, we end up in these situations where it's like, hey, I can't find that thing we were talking about, and it's like, oh, it's because it's on an email thread, or oh, it's because it was not on an email thread, and that's the only spot I looked. So sure, if it was, documented and there were rules in place and people followed them, it's like, well, there's no excuse. But I also feel like if there were rules about how to communicate, I probably would just stop communicating because it would feel so unnatural.
Oh man, I'll have to dig up that Ashby blog, because they have kind of a point of pride for, like, I think they said something about it's a rite of passage for every new employee to end up posting something in Slack that gets responded to immediately with a, hey, this is supposed to be an email, or this should be an email. Kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it, but like, I guess I don't have experience to say whether or not that works well. I hear it and I'm like, that feels super uncomfortable. But like, I mean, if they operate that way and it works really well, then excellent. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a product placement. It's
yeah. Are you sponsored by Corona?
Yeah. Whatever brand this even is. Yes, it's this podcast is sponsored by Fizzy Water. No. Someday, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had any challenges with, I guess, like, with patterns that you've seen emerging in how some of the, whether it's email or chat, and like how people are using it and like the direction that it starts to go? So for example, like, I mean, I already can't remember the company we were just talking. Ashby?
Yeah.
Ashby. If, like they have some things in place where they can like tell people don't do it this way. But have you seen things emerge like kind of over time where you're like, this seems to be a direction that maybe we don't want to be going, but it's kind of coming up naturally, and then like thoughts around course correcting, just letting it happen, or?
Gosh, I'm trying to think about that. Have I been anywhere long enough for that to be a problem?
Sure.
No. I was thinking about, we used to have this debate on the team at Circle. We had a team channel, which is, I've said I encourage a team channel where anybody can just share anything with the team. I want people to post in the morning, like, hey, good morning.
Sure. Yeah.
Or whether
and your team was like remote entirely, right? Like,
yeah, completely remote. And so it's a place where people can just like hang out with the team. You can also talk about technical questions and whatever. It's just like, it's the, hey, I would turn around in my seat and say this to a physical neighbor if I could channel. But there was this like push for like, okay, well, that's like a team social channel, and then we should have like an official team channel, because like when people not from our team come to our channel, they don't know how to like find the information, like, you know what I mean? And so then they started having these like kind of like these this proposal for this like public facing team channel, and then this like and it was like it wasn't even people, it was people would want to like show up and see our channel and be able to see like relevant information to them. So if the product team wants to know like what we're working on that week, right? They want to see that posted in the channel, but they don't want to see like, hi, good morning, here's a picture of my latte art.
Yeah.
And it was I continued to advocate for a single channel because I don't think people should be coming to the channel to get that kind of information. It's not there for status updates. We have Jira. We have go ask people what you need to know. We have dashboards. Like, and it just, what I said was, I'm confident that as soon as a team has multiple channels, they will naturally gravitate to one of them. And the other one becomes a wasteland. And so either they naturally gravitate to the one where they can talk about whatever they want, and you've now created this channel where other people are hanging out expecting to get useful information, and it's quiet. And they're like, what the hell is this team even working on? No one ever says anything or shares anything. Or people feel obligated to post in that channel, and it stifles all natural communication between the team. So that's probably one. I don't know the right answer. I feel like the right answer is, if people have expectations for a channel, it's probably not supposed to be in a, not supposed to be, it's probably not the best use of a team channel. Maybe a project channel, maybe a Jira board or a dashboard.
Sure.
But not a team channel.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm trying to think. Like, we don't run into that. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say we, as in like collectively at Microsoft or something.
You speak
like
for every Microsoft team.
I speak for a very small group of individuals at Microsoft. I'm trying to think, in the way we're set up, I feel like that can't happen just because, like, I don't know how to discover the other chats unless people are using Teams
Yes.
a lot more actively and than I've ever seen. Like, but it's not how I operate, so I don't know. But I'm trying to think back to Magnet, and even when we had these different Slack rooms where we had team Slack rooms, and I could remember being like, you want to hop into a team Slack room, and it was a similar thing to go get information. And it would generally be, I feel like it was a lot less about, I'm going to go searching for the context in this chat. But it was more like, I'm going to go in there to go post my question to the subject matter experts and learn about things. But
yeah,
I think that worked well, but also, for example, if you were like, I'm just making this up because I can't remember any of the chats, but if you were like, I'm going to go join Team A's chat and I want to ask a question, but Team A is the team that's always talking about ridiculous stuff in their chat. To be honest, that was probably our chat. But yeah. So if people are coming in and asking questions and it's just being like, completely bombarded by like memes about Pop-Tarts and different flavors of the week for Pop-Tarts, like, they're going to be like, what am I doing here? Like, I just came here to get information. I can't find it. So I think that's really, I know my example sounds really ridiculous, but I think it's important.
But it's real.
But not only is it real, but it's around the expectation of communication and how you're getting information, right? So if there was a clear expectation that, like, and I feel like for what we're describing here, that expectation would have to be beyond just your team. It would have to be like an organizational thing where it's like teams are expected to be able to go to other teams and join their chat and find all the information they need. But if like one team is doing that, no other team is, then like, it's not going to feel good. So
we talk about like things kind of just becoming culture.
Right.
I don't recall ever saying to my team, hey, when someone posts a question into our team channel, I expect you to answer. But everyone cared enough about our team and about our product that everybody wanted to. In fact, I seem to recall the opposite. I seem to remember telling people like, hey, y'all, when someone comes with a question, like, maybe don't 5 of you like swarm them with answers and like bombard them to the point where they're like, whoa. Like, forget I asked. There's like,
where's the exit button?
Y'all care too much about this. Like, it was kind of that. And we ended up kind of establishing this norm of, hey, whoever is carrying on call this week should be the first responder to questions in our team channel. Fine.
Sure.
But I never, ever felt like I had to go tell people, hey, did you notice that someone asked a question 2 hours ago, but you buried it in Pop-Tart memes and now like no one's answering? Like it just didn't happen. Even if our channel was noisy, I don't think that it was like a stream of like different messages of different contexts every minute. I don't believe that.
Enough that you would lose a question coming in. And
right.
I think like we actually have a problem. Like I shouldn't say a problem. Like I think it's a challenge that we have with email, because in the exact same situation you described, but replace the chat room with email. And it would be like for us, whoever's on call when people are messaging the team, like, sure, anyone can go answer, but if you can take priority, you know, if you're not handling an incident, if you can answer the questions, great. But there's absolutely situations where it's like, yeah, we got like, you know, 10,000 emails today. Did one slip through and no one on the team saw it? And it was hard to know if someone else was going to respond to it while you were busy. Like, yeah, that happens. And yeah, there are times where I or someone else will follow up and be like, ping, like, can anyone answer this? And I just feel like, I don't know, I'm not saying this is a solution, but I feel like if it were in a chat, it would just be so much more obvious. Like it wouldn't be as easy to bury it.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying for the last like couple of weeks. I've been trying to do this like inbox zero thing, and it's hard enough when I get 5 to 10 emails a day. I can't imagine what I would do if I was getting a larger volume than that.
I woke up today, and because I'm on call this week, I had this stream of new automated emails coming in, and I was trying to set up a rule to like move them to a folder, because I was like, I had like 70 before like I had finished breakfast. And I was setting up this rule, and I just kept having more coming in, and I'm like, I set up the rule, like it's not even running. And I wasted a portion of my day just trying to be like, how do I get these out? Because it's just another set of noise, and it's not the only set of noise. It's really challenging to navigate useful information when you have so much coming through. Like if I wanted to, I could sit at my phone and just swipe notifications or not even notifications, sorry, like swipe the incoming emails that are like signal information, like automated messages, just like boop, 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 all day.
One of the things I've tried to do with our like automated messaging is like very explicitly separate it from the human messaging. And I mean, we've had channels for like, I don't know, people don't always agree with this one, and that's okay. You don't have to. And I have been wrong before, once, but we used to joke about like the everything is okay alarm, and like getting alerts for things. Like a good example for me is like a commit was merged, and like every merge gets deployed, and so like you get a notification for like a successful deployment. And I'm in the camp where I'm like, just tell me about the failed deployments. Like, okay. Like I don't need to know that things successfully deployed. Like that happens like 15, 20 times a day. It's fine. And so I've got this channel that's just like deployment success. I'm like, why are we doing this to ourselves? And I think like there is this desire to like default to alerting for all of these different things, and that ends up generating a lot of noise to the point where people, I mean, I'll be completely honest, we have a channel that has like a log stream of error logs, and I have it muted because I like having no notifications when nothing needs my attention, and there is always a notification if I'm in that channel unmuted. That means like we need to go fix our logging, certainly, because if I'm muting it, other people are muting it, and then what value is it actually providing?
Yeah, now it's hidden, right? Like it's
right. And there's like sometimes where people are like, yeah, you know, it logs an error because we use a catch for control flow. Like, don't do that, but we do. So like it logs an error, but we expect that. Like, so every time this thing that we expect to happen happens, we're gonna get a pop up in the error channel. Like,
hey everyone, things are good.
So
Hey,
I think
everyone, things are good.
there's different kinds of information, and people should think critically about that. There's like, this is appropriate to be pulled. This is okay to be pull information. My weekly engineering KPIs, that's pull. You don't have to push that in front of me. I'll go look for that. You know, any kind of stats, same thing. I don't know why we would necessarily push that unless it's actionable. And then it's like,
Sure.
okay, well, if there is an action to be derived from this, then yeah, sure.
That's a good like separation already, right? Is like, is it actionable? Because in the situation where things are good, it's like what action are you taking? Unless there was a legitimate thing. Let's imagine a scenario where it's like this step in a workflow is finished, success, and there's a manual step, and you're like, oh, good, now I can go do the next thing. But I'm assuming most of the time that's not the case here. It's like our health signals are good. Like,
yeah. And the arguments I've heard are like, one, people are like, well, we want to be able to know like these things. And that's where I say like, well, that's pull information. If you are interested in finding something out, we should absolutely make it available to you. But I don't think we need to be pushing alerts and creating alert fatigue over things that you're not going to action. The second argument I've heard, and I don't have a great response to this one because I operate on a foundation of like trust and optimism, and a lot of people don't. So this doesn't jive with them. But they're like, sure, if we don't have a thing telling us, for example, it's a bit extreme, but like I said, you know, I don't want a notification when deploys are successful. Tell me when they fail. If you don't trust that that system works properly, I have had people tell me, I want to see the successful deploy notification because I don't trust without it that things are deploying. I don't trust that the failure notification will actually show up if things have failed, which I guess is valid, but there's probably better ways to build that trust.
Yep. I can think of two different things that you might tack onto a system like that. One is, sounds funny, but a monitor for the monitor. You could do that. The next part is like when your system that you're monitoring is not doing its job, what's the downstream effect of that? So I can think of one example for us because we work in deployment. When builds are ready, we deploy them. So you could have like if the alerting system or all the metrics or something were broken for, hey, is the build ready? We have something that will monitor our deployments and it goes, hey, saturation level for this deployment's too low. Like something's not right. So that would mean that it's the next earliest signal that we could get to be like, hey, what's up? We go, look, yeah, we're not deploying. Why aren't we deploying? Oh, the build is stalled, or oh, build team is on it, kind of thing. Right. So
I'm also a pretty big fan of like anomaly detection. So, hey, normally like this action has happened this many times by now and it hasn't. Like something might be missing.
Sure.
We did a lot of like operational like Datadog charts, and one of the things I thought was really cool that one of our staff engineers set up was we were monitoring something about some service. I don't remember the details on this one, but I know what it was. We were interacting with another service.
Okay.
And so what he did was he charted API calls, I think volume of API calls or volume of events, I can't remember. And then there was an overlay of a trend line from comparing to the previous week. So it was like, hey, if we did we impact them so much that we 5x'd the volume of this thing, right? Like we would see that. And I thought that was really cool just to be able to be like, oh, like it's not just lines going up. Okay, well, is that good or bad? Or like how much volume is too much versus okay? And in this case, it was like, well, here's what's normal. And I thought that was really cool. We had the same thing. We had like a steady stream chart of like events being published, API calls. And like, if you would see, we had enough volume and traffic in our service that like, you would see a steep line if like something wasn't working in if one of the routes was dead, like you would just see like, oh, that's normally here. And it's just like tanked. And the cool thing is when you set alerting thresholds, right? Then, okay, things tank. And as soon as it's like below, hey, we expect to at least get this API called, it doesn't even matter, once an hour. As soon as it isn't called once an hour, there's an actionable alert. So
sure. Yeah.
I don't know. So It's a bit rambly, but I do think a lot of people get caught up in the, oh, we need different places to post this because like different streams of information is coming in. And I think it's for me, the correct answer is I don't want to talk about where to divert those things. I want to talk about how to get rid of them or cut the noise.
Yeah, because honestly, once there's so much noise, it's like it doesn't matter. When you start having really good signals and systems and stuff in place and alerting, it's like you might miss it because now you have so much other stuff going on that it's like just detracting from where the value actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you guys, you kind of mentioned it already, but with respect to like that kind of information, so if you had something like, signals are experiencing like sort of your traffic patterns are different, for example, compared to the week prior or whatever. Would that be something that the team would be advocating like, hey, like put that into the chat? Or is that like, would that be like, put it through an email for... I'm thinking about like the build fail versus success and like park that if you have like API degradation kind of thing or availability down.
Yeah, I mean, even that, right? Like you can go a bunch of ways, but realistically, we put the actionable information in front of the right people. So even that, like, it goes to it pages the on-call person, right? Like,
right. Okay.
It's like, hey, like something's wrong. Here you go. What benefit would there be to post that to, say, our team channel?
For the team to panic and then go, who's going to do this?
Yeah, who's going to action it? And you already know who's going to action it. So
send it to them.
Same thing. I love systems where, like, when a build fails, it emails the committer, right? Like, I don't care. I don't need to know that the build failed because someone pushed code. They probably need to know because their code didn't go where they expected it to go. So it's the same thing. It's like, if you're going to have a Slack channel like that, in my opinion, that's like, hey, a build failed. It should @tag the person who's responsible.
Sure.
Right? That was not just like, because otherwise 8 of us look at a channel that goes build failed. We probably all care because we care about our product, but it doesn't make sense for us all to go action it. So
right. You probably just mute it and then you have this channel filling up with data that no one's ever going to go look at.
Inevitably. Yeah. So, what are the kinds of things that would get posted? I'm trying to remember. Code review metrics, right? Like,
okay.
Hey, this many PRs have been open for more than 12 hours. Whatever, something like that. This you've been assigned to this PR, you haven't commented yet, and it's been this long, whatever.
And that would go to like a shared Teams channel? Or
I think it depends. We did I mean, if it's your PR, or you're assigned to something you need to review and you haven't done it, that's a you action. But I think there's also like, hey team, what's the general state of things this morning? But only for things that inevitably should be actioned again, right? So
okay.
What's the state of like our open PRs? That's the thing where it's just like, hey, and again, it depends on culture. We didn't necessarily assign specific individuals to PR reviews. So everybody is encouraged to be engaged in any that they think are relevant to them, or all if they want to. So it would make sense to post hey, there's this review that's been sitting around waiting for reviews and it hasn't got it yet. And the team can be like, oh, right. Like, we'll make sure that one gets pushed through before I go pick up another task or whatever.
That makes sense. And because you mentioned culture, but you have to bring some of because we were talking about like different communication modes, and primarily it was kind of like email and chat. Then we were getting into like, I guess, like signals and alerting, and how I think you described it well. Like if it's actionable, like that's where you want to put that action in front of the person. Otherwise it's kind of like, don't like just shut up because what are we going to do with it? But you mentioned culture in the last little bit you were talking there. So I'm kind of curious, maybe when it comes back to like, whether it's channels or email, and we start talking about these, like whether they're actionable signals and stuff, I don't know. I don't yet know how I'm going to frame my question, so it might just come out incorrectly. But I'm trying to think through, like, you have a team, and maybe based on the maturity of that team, whether it's a new team or a more mature one, how do you go through this process of being like, these are things we care about, and how does it evolve into like let's start putting the right things in front of us, or we're trying it and these aren't the right things, like get them out of the way. Like, what is like a high level, how does that kind of evolve from nothing to something? It's a weird question, but
I don't know if I know.
I'm also trying to think of the answer while I asked you, by the way, so I'm not trying to leave you hanging at all. Because I feel like you make mistakes doing it, right? You're like, this is an interesting signal. Like, we should put that in front of us. Like, let's do it. And then
I think that's probably. I think that's probably. I mean, I don't know. At a very rudimentary level, I think anytime you or as an individual on the team encounter a situation where you're like, oh shit, I wish I knew about that sooner, right? Or like, why didn't we know about this? Those are the things where you're like, I think you have two choices, I guess, is when I think about it. You default to noise with the intention to pare away the things that are actually like noisy and distracting until you get to a set where you're like, oh, I'm happy with this. And then inevitably when new things get added, you have to default to, okay, well, they're going to be noisy again. And you run the risk of that kind of like muting effect happening because you're introducing noise. Or you go the other way and you expect that there are going to be misses, but that you will kind of like correct the misses once you recognize them. I don't know. I mean, certainly I've been on many teams where we've kind of inherited like a messaging or alerting strategy. We're able to go kind of tweak and tune. But from Greenfield, like, I don't know. I don't know how you expect to get out of it without some kind of like realizations for you to go then act upon.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I'm like I said, I was trying to think of this like an answer even from my own experience, I guess. And I think where my head was going is kind of like when you start realizing that there is information that you have at least cared about once or something, and you're like, I probably want to care about it again. It's like, okay, well, find a way to put it in front of us, whatever it happens to be. And whatever mechanism you use, whether it's email alerts or chat room, whatever. And I'm trying to think like from a management perspective or like leading a team, like empowering people that if they were like, I care about this, we should be able to see it. Like letting people be able to kind of speak up and be like, hey, like we want the build failures rolling in. Like we need to know when that's happening. We want to know when availability is down. We want to make sure we're having these types of signals. But I think as that happens, like, I think to your point, though, it's like that's gravitating towards that one end of the spectrum that you were describing, which is like you're going to get the muting effect because suddenly everything's an alert and it's showing up in the important spot. So you still have to kind of rely on the team to be able to continue to speak up and be like, this isn't as important as we thought, or this is too noisy. And but that's not something that I feel like it's not something that we can just sit there and be like, hey, team, like, go do it this way. Because you mentioned culture, and I think a lot of that stuff is team culture and kind of has to come from the team about what they care about. Because to be honest, you and I talking here about the things we value, about how we would like to see that information, I don't know, like, I'm assuming probably that team members would be mostly aligned to that. But if you were to survey the team and they were like all saying, nope, I want to see all those build failures rolling right in, I don't care if it's my PR or not, like maybe that's the thing you do then, because that's what they value.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree with you. I think comes back to understanding what your team values are and revisiting those often, especially when teams change. shape team members, right? Like, all right, like, do we still all agree with this set of values? How does the way we work support that? And I think the communication patterns, both like automated and kind of human to human, will fall under those as well.
Yeah, and I like that you kind of brought it back. Like we talked about team charters and values and stuff before, but the communication part of that I think is really important, because I think a lot of the time it's easy to omit, I guess, because it's like we value like, you know, having scalable software. We value like that we're going to collaborate, and it's like, okay, but what fundamentally when you're thinking about how the team is going to work together, when you're talking about the things you value, like how you communicate and having alignment on that, I think is like a really fundamental part, because it glues the rest of the stuff together. Like it's like the how it happens, right? So I think that's a key part that's easy to forget.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we jumped around a little bit, but
yeah, I know. I think I thought that was valuable. I can't speak. I thought that was valuable. There we go. Second time's the charm. To be able to kind of chat through like communication patterns, especially kind of comparing and contrasting email and chat. Because I think both of us have been through some different waves of that, and the sort of the signal to noise ratio of different things and how you navigate that with the team, I think is important, because especially for people that have only been on teams that have kind of existed and you're just used to the steady state, I think it's important to kind of think through that. Teams starting up, what do they want to see? It's growing, so it comes back to culture in the end, right? And the fact that we don't dictate it, but that has to evolve and come from the team. So the team needs to be empowered to do the right things there.
Last time we talked about retros, and I think with everything involving teams and team processes, you want to at some point be able to like take a critical look at the way you're working and decide what of that is working or not working for you. I think this is true of communication patterns as well, right? And as soon as that becomes kind of stagnant and steady state, and people start accepting things the way they are, if, you know, you start recognizing that people have a whole bunch of channels muted because they've accepted that this is the way this is, and I don't want it, so I'm just gonna mute it. Like being able to take that step back and look at, okay, well, what of this is or is not working for us? How does it support or not support our values? I think that's really important as well.
It's a good note, right? So maybe one of the things I'll take away too is like when I chat with my team about retros and we have our retro board, maybe one of the things I'll start trying to look at and maybe seeding some thoughts around is like the different communication patterns we have. Off the top of my head, I don't have like a list of things ready to be like, hey, what about these? But that might be some good food for thought. So that's a takeaway for me.
I had an engineer on my team a couple teams ago who was one of those people, they do exist, who just kind of had his eyes in everything in Slack. Still an unbelievably productive engineer, and I'm unsure how he could engineer with the efficiency he did.
One eye over here and the other eye.
Like something. And, you know, what I thought was interesting is when I would learn pieces of information from him, and I'd be like, how did you know that? I'd be like, oh, well, like in this team channel, they were talking about this thing, right? And what I really enjoyed doing was figuring out the different pieces of information that I thought I should know, that I ended up learning from this engineer because of his like depth of involvement across communication channels, and then be able to take that away and be like, okay, anytime I learn something I think I should know from him that he kind of picked up in passing in Slack, that's a chance for me to question how else could I have known that? And that's probably a chance for us to change and hone our processes, which was kind of neat. So
that's cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks. No, this is good. I know when we kind of went into this, we were kind of went a couple different directions there, but I think this is valuable. I like I said, I have a takeaway, so I'm pretty excited about that. And thanks for the chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, now I got to go do an audit of my Slack and emails.
I have to go click on the teams and see what kind of teams are in Teams.
What's teaming in there?
Awesome. So thanks for watching. If you could do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, then you get to see more conversations like this. We'd appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.